We're here with Dr. Mark Vorderbruggen. He has a PhD in chemistry, which is kind of new for us. I don't think we've had a chemist on before, so I'm excited. And he's going to talk to us about wild foraging, which is one of the many things he does. So let's get to it. Hello, Mark. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure to talk.
Yeah, well, this I think is going to be really exciting for our listeners. It's funny because last week, our 2 weeks. Our episodes come out every 2 weeks, but our last episode, we talked about eating wild game and preparing wild game with Chef Jesse Griffiths from Daidue in Austin. And so now we've got the plants. So we're just like getting the whole plate filled up for everybody here with the wild stuff. So that's exciting. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself to start off with and what foraging is.
All right, let's do the easy thing. Let's talk about what foraging is.
Okay.
And it is the gathering of wild resources. Uh, Humans have been doing it since before we were humans. So before there was HEB or Kroger, shout out to them. The there's we got our food and our medicine from the wild. And just to put things in perspective, the first synthetic medicine wasn't invented until 1883. The first grocery store was in 1901. So
Really?
before that, yeah, Piggly Wiggly.
Wow.
Yeah,
Piggly Piggly Wiggly was the first?
yeah.
That's
Before that, there
awesome.
were stores, you could buy
Right.
salt and flour, but yeah. But for a majority of the time humanity has been around, which is over 250,000 years, uh, we've gotten our foods just from walking around and going, oh, that looks good. There's a little more to it than that. But that's that in a nutshell, no pun intended, is the where we got our food. I mean, of course, there's also the wild game. I'm a big hunter,
Yeah.
so I'm a big fan of that. Just to go a little farther in that, when people ask me what I do for a living, my general response is I am a preacher of cavemanosity. And
Love
what
it.
I mean by that is I've dedicated my life, yes, to chemistry, but in particular, natural products, which led into the foraging, which led into the medicinal plants, which led into a deep study of human nutrition, and in particular, what we ate when we were evolving, and what we did when we were evolving, and what the world was like when we were evolving, because that's what we're designed for. And here's the problem: what we have now is not what we evolved for. And so that leads to a lot of health issues. And so my goal is to reconnect people to caveman actions and cave woman, cave person, the whole, to try and give them the health. Because remember, we conquered the world with a stone on the end of a stick. I kind of have my doubts about people recreating that now
Yeah,
and being able.
yeah, that's true.
So, and because we don't have to anymore. We kind
Right.
of got a little soft. So I try and give people things that they can do, simple things, easy things, quick things they can do to honor and invigorate the cave ancestors that we have.
That's awesome. Cavemanosity. I love it. So how did you get into foraging? Where did you do this as a child or what?
Yeah, so I grew up in a small farming community up in Minnesota. And one of the ways the small communities got through there was, or well, so my parents are children of the Great Depression.
Mhm.
And so one of the ways they got through that troubled time was knowledge of wild edible plants. It was still common knowledge for my grandparents, my parents, and it just became something we did. I have two brothers. My older brother is 10 months older. My younger brother is 13 months younger. My
Wow.
parents quickly figured out that the only way they were going to survive us is if they took us out into the woods every day. We eventually figured out how to get back home, but that was part of their thing, is just to wear us out. And what better place to wear out kids than in the nature where there's rocks and sticks and
Exactly.
frogs and all this sort of thing. But while we were out there, they just shared with us the knowledge that they acquired when they were growing up. This food is, this plant you can eat, this is medicine, all these sort of things. So it just became a thing. You are born knowing you're going to be a scientist. And so I knew from kindergarten on I was going to be a scientist. My original plan was to be an astronaut, but they have a limit. The, you cannot be over 6'3"
Oh
and be an
no.
astronaut because they can't make the spacesuits big enough. I'm
Right.
6'5".
Oh.
I hit 6'5" in middle school.
Oh, wow.
Vigorous grower, the woods.
The woods.
But so I had to change gears. Ended up in chemistry because messing around with the fundamental particles of the universe. That sounds pretty cool. Let's do that. But I was blessed that my research advisors, my plan then was actually to become a medicinal chemist. So I got a master's in medicinal chemistry and then the PhD in physical organic chemistry. So not making molecules, but looking at the molecules that man and God created and figuring out how best to apply them to the issues that humanity is having. Like I said, with a bend on going into, Pfizer or something like that. But my research advisors that I worked under were all big into natural products. So I spent a lot of time extracting compounds from oysters and bananas and whatnot and studying them. And it's like, this is so cool. And this is way easier than trying to make a molecule from scratch, or so I thought. We'll get into that later.
Okay.
But it's like, why try and make something new when it's all out there if you spend the time looking for it? Because I'm kind of lazy.
Oh,
And I'll let someone
I
else do the
believe
hard
that.
work. And my specialty was then looking at this molecule over here that they used to solve one problem and applying it to a totally different problem somewhere else that had the same fundamental issues. And so it worked very well for my career.
Wow. That's really neat. Very neat.
So following off that chemistry background, that seems to really blend in then with what you're into now, looking at these sort of holistic methods for human disease. I was looking at your website. There's a whole bunch of things on there that I was like, wow, I wouldn't even think about this. I just go to the store, pick up an aspirin or whatever, and that's that. But there are so many natural ways to cure human elements. Do you feel like that chemistry degree really propelled that for you?
Oh, 100%. Here's the thing. And what you're doing is what everyone does. If you are trying to medicate the masses, you need mass-produced medicine. It's as simple as that. If you are going with plant medicine, there's a lot of extra steps and labor and space, and it's not cost effective. It's not environmentally effective. It's not time effective. So I say, really, the masses get the mass-produced medicine. The elite go back to the herbs and the mushrooms.
Mhm.
So, and if you think about it, evolution. The key about evolution is that creature which was best adapted to the environment was the one that would reproduce and pass its genes on. Those humans that responded best to the medicinal plants were the ones that were passing their genes on. They were the healthiest. So there's almost a genetic intertwining between us and medicinal plants, if you think about it that way.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Just-
Yeah.
So my goal is just to say, hey, check this out. We used to use this. Think about using it again. And because I'm a scientist, I need actual data. So it's not just the fact that it's been used for 30,000 years. It's also been studied. We know what molecules are doing what in the human body. And then I go, okay, since my name is on the bottle, I need proof as a scientist.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, sort of tangential to that. Could you talk to us a little bit about foraging ethics? Because this is something that just blew my mind. I was telling Sandra that, I've had friends go out and tell me, "Oh, I've got a great patch of morels, and I harvested all of them." And I always thought, "Oh, okay, that sounds great." But then I was sort of reading through your site, and maybe that's not always ethical or respectful to the earth and to other foragers. And I would love for you to dive into that because it's something I sort of never thought about before.
Okay, so there's an economic theory called the tragedy of the commons, which means when you have some public resource that everyone can access, it immediately gets wiped out because it's a race to see who can get it the first, the most, and harvest that resource. That's why we have hunting laws, why you can't harvest every deer, catch every fish out there. The idea of foraging was lower on the totem pole. And in fact, a lot of places just banned it outright. Here in Texas, it's actually illegal to take plant material from a piece of property without the property owner's permission. This goes back to the sheep and cattle wars of the 1800s, where people were killing each other over access to the common, the public land. And so the Texas government did what every parent does when their kids are fighting. They say, fine, no one gets it. But when it comes to foraging, there's also this innate desire to do that. Everyone I've ever talked to who finds out what I do say, oh, I've always wanted to do that.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that because there's some really interesting research behind that drive. But what it boils down to is there are really 4 things as a forager you need to respect to be an ethical forager. The first is respecting the law. The laws covering foraging differ from state to state and even county to county. So you need to know what you are allowed to pick, where you're allowed to pick it. You need to respect the land. Leave no trace. It's as simple as that. Houston Arboretum, beautiful, I don't even remember how many acres now, wild spot in the heart of Houston. And the trails are filled with candy wrappers and water bottles and all this stuff. It's like, why, people? Leave no trace. Mm-hmm. Respect the plant. And this is a key one. On my website, foragingtexas.com, there's over 220 different plants and mushrooms that are edible or medicinal or otherwise useful to humans. But the key bit of information for each one is how much of this plant is out there, the abundance code, because that tells you how much you can harvest. So is it invasive? Is it plentiful, common, uncommon, rare, or endangered? Invasive. Let's say you need 2 cups of honeysuckle flowers for a recipe. Go ahead and collect those 2 cups and then keep going until your fingers bleed. We're trying to get the invasive plants out because they are disrupting the ecosystem just as badly as humans are. Plentiful, a lot of the weeds around here are plentiful. You can take 50% of them and God will restock the shelves very quickly. Common, you start dialing it back a little, 25%, uncommon, 10%, rare, get a selfie with it, but wait until the next apocalypse before you eat it. And then endangered, people ask, why do you have endangered species on your edible plant lists? It's because I've been doing this since 2008, and Texas botanists have figured out, hey, this guy is training all these people to go out into the wild looking at plants and identifying plants. Let's piggyback on this guy. Because they're lazy too. and so I have a few endangered plants that they were known to be food or medicine for the indigenous people of the area, but for whatever reason, they've pretty much been wiped out. And so there's hope that someday someone will find one. One endangered mallow was found in that way. That people said, "What is this? It's a mallow." It's like, it's that one, And so it's like, there's much rejoicing. Yeah, how much you take the plant, very key point. Also, how you go about taking it from the plant. You don't want to just rip, some leaves off the plant, especially down here in Texas, because then you put a big hole in the skin of the plant. Fungus can get in there and the plant dies. So you always want to have a pocket knife or pruning shears or something with you to do a small surgical cut on the plant. And then the last one is simply respect yourself, because you don't want to eat something poisonous. So what I teach people, if you are trying to identify the plant between, say, the wild plant in the ground and some particular reference guide, you want to match at least 5 structural features. The arrangement of the leaves, the shape of the leaves, the vein pattern of the leaves, the edge of the leaf, the location of the flower, the color of the flower, the size of the flower, the skin of the fruit. There's dozens of different structural features, but you want to match at least 5. Once you've matched 5, you're pretty much safe to go. With mushrooms, it's more like 8 to 10. And most people don't realize there's 8 to 10 structural features on mushrooms. It's like, get down and look at a mushroom.
Right.
So, but if you follow those things, you will be self-limiting. You'll be respectful, because if you don't, you might just end up removing yourself from the gene pool and,
Sure.
Yeah.
evolution in action.
Right, right.
That's a great principle to match 5 characteristics. I've never heard that before. So cool.
Yeah, seems like a safe
I came up with
Uh-huh.
it, but it's
Oh,
become the
nice.
thing now.
All
Yeah.
right.
coined
Nice.
here then.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people they want to get in foraging. They've used my website, but they're just not confident yet. They want someone to hold their hand. It's like, look, 5 structural features, you're good to go. And
Yeah,
That's cool.
that's
Yeah.
pretty much where I'm at. I don't trust myself.
yeah.
So maybe a good follow-up from that, in respecting the land, and this might tie in there. Do you find that it's hard to find places in Texas to forage with 95% of the land being private? And do you go onto private land, or are you utilizing public land mostly?
So not public land. The only real public land that you can harvest in is mushrooms in the national forests. So in the Sam Houston, the Davy Crockett, the Angelina, and the Sabine.
Sabine.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Sabine National Forest. There you're allowed to harvest 1 gallon of mushrooms per person per day for private use, not for
Not
sale.
know that.
Down in the Big Thicket National Preserve, the superintendent there has allowed the harvesting of 1 pint of berries per person per day for private use, not for making stuff to sell. You're also allowed to harvest along Texas roadsides. Every spring, the Texas Department of Public Safety puts out a white paper entitled "Yes, you can call," or "Yes, you can pick the blue bonnets. Stop calling us." And basically, you are allowed to harvest the aerial plants along roads. And this goes again back to the time when we were riding horses rather than cars. They had to be able to
Oh,
eat.
yeah.
That being said, I've started contacting, there's an organization called Hip Camp, which is like Airbnb for campers. It's people that have, ranchers and so forth that are opening up their land to people to camp on it. And one of the nice things about Hip Camp is if you join Hip Camp as a landowner, you get put in this umbrella insurance policy. So you get $1 million of liability insurance in case, someone stupid shows up on your property.
Oh. Mhm.
So it's a great way of opening up more land for camping. It's
Interesting.
worldwide. It's very popular in Texas. And one thing I've been doing is reaching out to hip camp owners and finding out if they will allow foraging on their property. Because one of the things that the hip camps owners can do is they can offer upgrades.
Uh-huh.
Like it's very popular. They'll throw in, 6 farm fresh chicken eggs, or you can have tea with my horses, or come pet the llama, sort of thing, and charge extra for it. So they're thinking this is great. We can,
Yeah.
get our weeding done. Yeah. So if you go to the Foraging Texas website, there's actually then private lands allowing foraging, and it lists different hip camps and other places where you can go.
Okay, so Hip Camp, is that the most common place that you forage then using that Hip
So usually I'm lucky because I know edible plants, and a lot of property owners will trade me. They'll let me come hunt on their land in exchange for showing them the different wild edibles there.
Oh, fantastic.
So I got a nice barter set up. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I ended up having to buy another freezer for my wild game.
Oh, that's awesome.
So
Okay. So what are the easiest or most common plants to forage for in Texas? That's part one. And then what is like a eureka when you find it? Not that so rare that you should only take a selfie with it, but that it's like,
Okay.
yes, I love when I find this plant.
Okay. I saw that question and I thought, oh, good. I kind of get to be a jerk. and let me rephrase that. Oh, good. I get to be a college professor.
All right.
So
Ouch.
I love you guys. No.
Yeah.
No. So what you're asking indicates a very common blind spot that people have. So when you're asking it's starting to rain. Oh, well. When you ask that question, you got to remember, Texas has 14 different ecological zones.
Mhm.
Oops. And so I'm trying to move out of the rain here, just a second. So, hello.
We're here.
Okay. It's more of a question of what is the favorite plant in that ecological zone.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, wild onions. So
Wow.
Texas has 14 different distinct ecological zones. Texas has 14 different native wild onions.
Really?
There's one wild onion for each ecological zone in Texas, from East Texas out to West Texas, Big Bend, Blackland Prairie, Gulf Coast, all that. So, and the nice thing about the wild onions is they're also really good starter foraging food. Because if it looks like a wild onion and smells like a wild onion, it's a wild onion. If it looks like a wild onion and doesn't smell like a wild onion, it's one of the mimics, two of which, yeah, are deadly. So, but you know, smell is a structural feature, so it falls in that category. And I tell people, if you find a wild onion, you know, smell it. If it smells like a wild onion, you're good to go.
Yeah. Okay.
If you have an impaired sense of smell, have someone who likes you smell it. You know, and you're good to go. So yeah, and the wild, I mean, I cannot cook without onions.
Yeah.
It's impossible. So I don't know how many varieties I have growing in my yard, but several. So
is wild onion also your happy find then when you're?
Oh no, well, no, it's so common. It's like it's my go-to find. My happy find would be chicken of the woods mushrooms.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Those, they're more prevalent up in the hill country area than down in the Houston area or the Sam Houston. But when I find one of those, it's like, oh, time for the happy, happy dance of joy. So then away I go. Yeah. Then I guess the lion's mane mushroom is way up there too, and we're currently in lion's mane mushroom season. So I'm hoping to get up to Sam Houston here in a few days and do some lion's mane mushroom hunting.
That's neat. I've bought lion's mane before, and it's so good for you. I think I have extracts. Actually, I've prescribed lion's mane, and I didn't know it grew in Texas. I guess I thought it was this far away thing. I don't know, but I just didn't realize it was around here.
Yeah. And it's we actually have 3 varieties or 3 species of it.
Wow.
So it's tasty, and like you said, yeah, it's also really good for your brain.
Yes.
It's been scientifically shown to increase neural connections in the brain, which helps with memory, helps with recall, helps with problem solving, all that sort of stuff. I actually have it in one of my formulas.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, we need to talk about those. In a few minutes, we're going to talk about like all your good stuff. But you're outside right now, and you said it was getting ready to rain. So before you get poured on,
I'm under an overhang now, so I'm okay. Yeah.
Are there any for the folks who are watching us on YouTube? Are there any plants you can show us that might be hanging out in your yard right now?
Yeah, and in fact, I'm hoping I have a kind of an old camera here, so I'm hoping it doesn't die. Okay, so let's start right here. I have my cooking herb garden. Can I get lower? Oh yeah. Well, then I need the microphone. I'm going to point with my foot. Okay. So here we have lamb's quarter, which is super nutritious. A bunch of wild onions, some henbit, some scarlet pimpernel, which is really interesting because it was medicinal. It no longer is.
Really?
But it's because of a change in humans rather than the plant.
Really? Okay, you're going to have to explain that now. I'm intrigued.
And then over here, we have the Yopon holly, which is the only naturally occurring source of caffeine. Got wild violets, got dandelion, got Texas dandelion, got cleavers, got curled dock, got spiderwort, got bayflower, lyre leaf sage.
So you forage, but you're also just growing some of these things on purpose so that you can just come out and clip some things from your garden, right?
Yep. I don't know if you can see it. That's great. Like I said, it's still raining. But maybe not. So there's a concept called permaculture, where you create a ecosystem, a self-sustaining ecosystem using edible plants. So you have everything from the big trees, medium trees, bush level, ground cover, tubers, vines, all this sort of thing. But it's all edible plants. Normally it's done using domesticated plants, food plants. Why would you do that when you can just...
Boring.
I just tore up my grass, put assorted sticks with branches on it for birds to perch on,
Brilliant.
put a bird bath, well, 2 bird baths, one with water, one with sand. Birds fly in, they flip around in the water, they get some sand, they go sit on a branch and they poop. And there's always interesting seeds in the bird poop. And so the last time I took inventory of my yard was 2016. I have a 30-foot by 70-foot backyard at 81 different wild edible plants growing.
Wow.
And I don't do anything for it. Well, when a plant grows, I first identify it. Is this good or bad? If it's bad, it's gone. But if it's good, it sits there and I let it see, does it do well there? Because the plants, the seeds will pop up all over, but the plants will only thrive in their particular niche that they like growing, their micro environment.
Mm-hmm.
And so by doing that, I basically have a wild backyard that involves me doing nothing more than standing here drinking a beer and going, what shall I eat today?
That's so cool.
I love giving talks to gardening groups. I give a lot of them because they work so damn hard. And I'm just, let me make your life easier.
They're pulling up all the stuff that you're eating, I bet, right?
Yep. My favorite talk to them is called Toss Salads, your secret garden. Stuff you're throwing out.
That's terrific. So you mentioned this. There are some dangerous lookalikes. What are the best tools that you could recommend to folks for making sure that you're on the right thing and not a lookalike?
Okay. Your eyes, a measuring stick, and a magnifying glass.
Okay.
But it's like I said, you're looking at structural features. So magnifying glass for looking at hair on the plant. Where is the hair located? How long are their hairs? The inner workings of the flower, things like that. And then resource guides. Okay, you opened up the door, so I'm going to walk through it.
I'm giving you free reign.
I have my book, so the Outdoor Adventures Guide Foraging. It has 70 plants in it.
Wow.
The cool thing about this book is the publisher wanted it to cover all of North America, but there is no travel expenses involved in it. But going back to Texas, with our 14 ecological zones, the only state that has more ecological zones than Texas is California, and only because they have more and bigger mountains than we do.
Oh, it's true. Yeah.
But pretty much every plant in North America can be found somewhere in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, what time of the year do you look for it? Because a lot of the traditional edible weeds that people learn about are summertime weeds up north, but wintertime weeds down here in Texas. Anyway, so foraging, multiple pictures of each plant. There's a little map showing you what all states and Canadian provinces it's found in.
Oh.
If there's a mimic, it tells you how to identify everything is backwards. And it tells you how to use it. In the back, there's a calendar that tells you, okay, depending on what part of North Dakota, this is when you would actually be looking for that plant.
Oh, very good.
And then it also includes a bunch of recipes, what I call campfire cooking type stuff for using the things when you're out and about.
Oh, neat.
So,
okay, I need this book.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think
And
everybody.
I'm required to tell people that if you buy this book, I do earn 98 cents. So,
okay.
otherwise, I get in trouble with the tax man for not.
Yeah, well, you're gonna get
Us influencers are under all sorts of rules.
exactly. Well, you might get $2.94 from the three of us sitting right here in this room pretty soon, but hopefully some of our listeners will take
Available from Amazon, available from Medicine Man Plant Co.
Okay.
Available at my classes. I teach classes in person all over, so you can see my class list over on Foraging Texas, or my other website, medicinemanplantco.com. So
Okay, so we can find the classes on foraging.texas.
Texas.
Is that what you said?
Foragingtexas.com. Yeah.
Foragingtexas.com. But just quick rundown. What are your classes? And I mean, is it like an all-day thing? What do we do?
It depends on the location and the hosting organization.
Okay.
So it could be anywhere from an hour-long online presentation to a demonstration table set up at some sort of nature festival to a 4-hour walkabout where we're actually picking the plants and looking at the plants and tasting the plants to a 10-hour forage in the morning, cook in the afternoon, feast in the evening sort of
That
thing.
sounds fun.
So
All right.
yeah.
Okay, so foragingtexas.com, right? We got to check
Correct.
those out. Okay.
Yep.
For the listeners that are interested in taking one of your classes or getting more into it, could you tell us some of the benefits of foraging for your own food besides, saving the bucks from HEB,
Oh, good. Professor mode activated.
Yes. That's my second time doing that to you.
So I'm going to, I don't know how much time we have, but bear with me.
Just go with it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to Japan. We're in Japan. We're looking around. We realize Japan has a lot of old people, not a lot of young people. And they saw this coming 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago. So Japan spent a lot of time researching what can we do to maintain the health of our older people so they're not a drain on the resources of the younger people. One of the best things I found was that the more time you spend walking around outside in the wild, not on sidewalks, but out in the wild, the longer you maintain your physical and mental health. There's multiple reasons for this, and they all go back to what we evolved to do. So let's start with the mental side of things. When you are out walking around in nature, your eyes are picking up stuff, your ears are picking up stuff, your nose is picking up stuff. You're feeling the wind on your skin. You're feeling the ground under your feet. The brain has taken in all this information and analyzing it because that's what it evolved to do. Our brain evolved to be constantly analyzing our environment for resources and threats. That's what made us so successful. If you're just sitting in front of a computer all day, you're not getting this mental stimulation that you are when you're out and about. There's a huge link between attention deficit disorder issues and people not being outside. They found, especially with young kids, that if you can get them out in a green space, off the trail, 30 minutes, 3 times a week, their symptoms of attention deficit disorder plummet.
Wow.
Because that brain is finally doing what it's supposed to be doing. It's no longer a caged beast pacing back and forth. It's analyzing, it's touching, it's throwing things. Quick question. When you are throwing something, especially a moving target, how long do you think the window you have to release that rock is to hit the thing you're throwing a rock at?
Oh gosh. Millisecond, maybe.
Yeah, maybe a tenth of a
1/1600th
of
a second. If you throw it 1/1600th of a second too early or too late, you miss the target. But one of the things we did is we evolved to be able to throw things accurately, to kill it, to eat it, because there's a lot of nutrition in the organ meats and fats and stuff of animals. And so those that were better at throwing things at stuff were better adapted to the environment and were more successful. Well, there's something else that was interesting going on, is the part of our brain that controls throwing things at stuff is right up against the part of our brain that controls speech. So as we got better at throwing things at stuff, our control over our vocalizations got better. We started being able to communicate with each other and make hunting plans. And you go this way, I go that way, sort of thing. So I like to say, the great writers and orators of history were basically due because a monkey figured out how to throw a rock at another monkey. Going back to walking around, though, outdoors, I mentioned the feet picking up the sensations and balance, trying to figure out what am I walking on and what are the risks associated with it, and how do I safely get over the slippery, trippy sort of ground. That requires a whole bunch more brain activity. helps stave off the mental, degeneration. It's exercise for the brain. It also improves the sense of balance and strengthens the core muscles. There's a direct correlation between the strength of the core muscles and overall health. And there's a direct correlation between sense of balance and the likelihood of falling and breaking a hip when you're older. So the other people that show that improved sense of balance are bicyclists. So if you're not going to be walking around out in the woods every day, hop on a bicycle and ride around, some bike trail. At least on the bike trail, you're still getting the sensations, the visual, the audio, and the wind on your skin, the smelling things. Now, if you think about smelling things, that is the most direct connection between the ecosystem and our brains, is through our sense of smell. Nowadays, most people try and avoid smelling things. And you think about it, it's not something we use to key into what's in our surroundings. But it was one of our critical abilities and critical ways of doing this. Can I tell a story? I love this story.
Go for it, yeah.
Okay, so something happens when you're lost at sea. It's happened enough times that it's been scientifically documented. So you got someone lost at sea, and they're in their life raft, and they have a fishing kit. And they're catching fish and eating the fish. When they first start, for the first 6 weeks, they're just eating the muscles of the fish, the meat of the flesh. But after 6 weeks, something really interesting happens. Repeatedly, in numerous cases, it's like suddenly a switch got flipped in the brain. And now the person is looking at that fish and going, those eyeballs look really good. And the liver here, why have I not been eating the liver? And this part here, I don't know what this is, but I really want to eat that. Because there's all this nutrition in there. We evolved to analyze our surroundings. We can distinguish millions of colors, hundreds of thousands of scents, an incredible number of tastes. We evolved to taste, smell, look at our environment, and figure out what our body needs. There's all sorts of studies on this where you show people, you get people and put a buffet in front of them. They invariably target the foods that have the nutrients that they are currently missing. Because the smell, the sight, the taste, the body picks up on and goes, that thing? Eat more of that. You need that. Because that's what we evolved to do. And it's not just us, it's every creature. But for some reason, this has been forgotten. It can also be hijacked. Oh, processed food companies are good at hijacking it. Because there are certain things that we evolved to crave. Calories. A large history of humanity was constantly being on the edge of starvation. So we have nerve endings, taste buds in our gut that will tell us if we're eating a high calorie food, eat all of this, because you don't know when you're going to get it again. And then the package of Girl Scout cookies just disappears.
It's that time of year.
So you are fighting an evolutionary benefit that is no longer a benefit.
We're set up for failure in that regard.
Or get outside.
Or that. If you can fight the cravings.
It's tough, but that's
The getting outside is a clear benefit, but do you have any sort of caveats or dangers that you have encountered while foraging? Aside from misidentifying a plant, which I'm sure is you're well past now, other things.
Okay, so funny story time. I've never poisoned myself on a plant. I've always been very careful of properly identifying. The one time I developed an issue is when I was eating grasshoppers, because grasshoppers are food all over the world. And I was on a canoe trip and I came across a bunch of these really big grasshoppers munching along the shore, and they were slow moving. They weren't like jumping away from us. It's like, John the Baptist, locusts and wild honey, let's give it a shot. Roasted them up, and you want to cook them. I always cook the bugs because a lot of them carry tapeworms. Roast them, and they actually tasted surprisingly like steak. Maybe not as greasy and juicy, but the overall flavor was there. And it's like, oh, not bad. So these were the eastern lubber grasshoppers. And in retrospect, I should have realized this. They were very brightly colored. It's almost like a grasshopper and a monarch butterfly had
Yeah.
carnal, knowledge of each other. And the reason is because their main source of food is poison ivy.
Oh
Oh, no.
no. Oh.
Yeah. So
Oh.
now what's really interesting, something to think about. The only creature that reacts to poison ivy is humans. It doesn't affect cows, sheep, chickens, llamas, dogs. It only affects humans. Does that mean that the eastern lubber grasshopper evolved to avoid being eaten by humans by eating, the poison ivy and then develop the bright coloring, or how, so it's mysteries like that that keep me awake at night and give me wonderful things to think about as I'm driving 4 hours to a class. It's
Yeah.
like, this is fascinating. Because people seem to be focused on the now and forget everything that came before.
Mm-hmm.
A lot has come before.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
And sometimes I just think about that and go, whoa.
Whoa. Well, that's very intriguing. And you've given us a lot of great advice. But is there what's your one best piece of advice for beginners who want to get started in foraging?
Okay. So if you want to learn how to forage, start with the trees in the area. Just step out your door, look around, look at the trees. This is the one time I will actually recommend using one of those plant identification apps because they're pretty good at trees.
Mm-hmm.
But identify the trees, then look up, Foraging Texas, or there might be a few other websites out there. But what are the edible and medicinal uses of these trees? And you'll be amazed at how many there are. So just figure out the trees. And once you got the trees, you're on your way. Next, look at your landscaping plants. If you don't know what the landscaping plant is, take a picture of it, go to the local nursery, say, hey, what is this plant? And they'll tell you. Same process. Then you go and look up, are there any edible medicinal uses of hostas or Yopon holly or whatever, and go, whoa, I got all this hidden food in my yard. I am ready for the zombie apocalypse. And then from there, then you drop down to the weeds because you've built up that confidence. You've got those little dopamine hits that say, hey, I know what to do with an oak tree. Now let's see about these other weeds. And that's where you start really using books and other things. You can use an app, but they are terrible with weeds.
Yeah, they're not very.
So you can kind of use it maybe as an idea, but
They can sometimes get you to the family, and that's about what they're good for.
yeah, even then I found there's subtle but important differences that are really obvious to a human once they look at it, but to an artificial intelligence,
Yeah,
doesn't work.
don't work.
Yeah.
So we love to ask our guests for biology blunders, and in our last episode, we actually called it a culinary calamity with Dr. Griffith. We may have just heard your culinary calamity with the grasshoppers, but
Yeah.
do you have a biology blunder that you can share with us?
Ooh, let me think. Not recognizing what an alligator slide was when I first moved down here.
Oh, an alligator slide.
Slide.
Oh,
So the way the Foraging Texas website came about was actually when I first moved down to Texas in 1997, in the early days of the internet, there wasn't a good resource for looking up places to go hiking and camping and all that sort of stuff in Texas. So me being me, I built one. And I had a blog called Into the Borderlands. And every weekend I'd go out someplace and explore it. And when I'd get back, I'd write it up. And I started including different plants and mushrooms I saw because it just interested me. And people started reaching out, hey, we're going camping next weekend. Would you come along and teach us the wild edibles? It's like, yeah, okay, whatever. But I'd spent a lot of time kayaking and canoeing, often by myself, around Houston. A lot of the water has alligators. big alligators.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a big alligator to be a dangerous alligator. And it took me a while to realize there are certain places where I don't want to be walking around in the muck in the water, because there's all these signs that most people would recognize. Well, maybe not most people, but are strong indications that an alligator is here. So there's been a couple of times when I was caught off guard. Never bit, thank God. But it's like eventually I figured it out.
That's great. Yeah, I can imagine maybe those places where they slide in look like a good place to put a canoe in.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it looked like.
This is convenient right here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Get your kayak all loaded up,
Right.
push it right
Yeah.
down.
How convenient.
Yeah. Yeah.
The alligator's thinking, yes, come on in.
Come closer. I'm just a log.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with us today. Is there anything else that you want to tell us about or the listeners about?
Well, yeah, of course.
Of course. Any other parting knowledge that
So
you can't let us leave without?
I just want to mention my other thing is the Medicine Man Plant Co. So
Oh yeah. Let's
yeah,
talk
the
about
ancient plant scientifically supported for modern issues. So basically bringing back what you would or what your ancestors would have been using to treat issues that replace, aspirin and things like that. I currently have 10 products, and then this year I'll be expanding into some dog products too. So Medicine Man and Wolf.
Great.
So I have a dog joint pain powder that's mixed in with the food, and also a dog calming agent. So things like that. But yeah, I got 10 products out. I have 50 formulated, but I'm trying to do this without any loans or anything. So I got to sell one to afford the next. But it's been coming along. It's just started our 4th year. So I'm excited about that. In fact, we were just, the brain pill, just found out today, was picked to be the best men's supplement on the US market by, I forget which research group, but it's like,
Wow.
whoa, I didn't even know I was in the running. So that
That's fantastic.
there's going to be a margarita tonight to celebrate.
There better be.
Definitely. Congratulations.
So thank you.
That's
But
exciting.
it's yeah, I'm doing what I was put here to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're surrounded by all these miracles that everyone walks by, and especially kids. They're playing their games and watching the Instagram, and if they don't know nature, they're not going to love nature. If they don't love nature, they're not going to take care of nature. And Lord help us if that's the route we're on.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
bad feedback loop, huh?
Very true.
Mhm.
So what was the name of that site again where we can find your products?
So medicinemanplantco.com.
Okay, great. We're gonna check that out.
Yeah, can I ask you one thing about your
Sure.
products? Do you have obviously the brain pill sounds like it's doing fantastic. Is there kind of like a bestseller or one that, people go to start getting into it, or?
So our bestseller is the liver pill, which
Okay.
is burdock root, milk thistle, and flaxseed. Flaxseed is in there to make the other stuff bioavailable. That is by far our bestseller, but it was also the first one that came out.
Okay.
More recently, the blood pressure pill came out, and that is shooting up like a rocket. The one that depresses me the most at how well it's selling is the uric acid pill. So uric acid is the uric acid crystals are what cause the gout pain.
Oh.
And so it's designed to help flush out the pain of gout.
Hmm.
And the number of gout sufferers in the US is shocking.
Wow.
But
Wow.
then I have a stone breaker for kidney stones, the immune pill, the brain pill, the blood sugar pill, the libido pill, because you got to go where the money is. But everything, if it hasn't been in use for 20,000 years, I'm not interested. But at the same time, it all needs scientific proof that it actually does stuff. Because here's the thing, not every herb lives up to its billing.
Sure.
And so I need that scientific proof.
Okay, so you intrigued me with the liver pill here. I've been hearing for years about like liver detoxing and stuff like that. How does somebody know if they need that?
If you're living in North America, you probably need that.
Really?
We are horrible on your liver. Yeah.
Really?
Okay.
Just by our diets?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Diet, lack of exercise, lack of movement, lack of sunshine,
Mm.
vitamin D,
Yeah.
they all play a role.
Okay.
Processed
Good to
food.
know.
Processed food is the new smoking. It replaced sitting as the new smoking. There's always a new smoking. But
And we still have smoking. Sadly.
yeah, we're humans.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has really been eye-opening for me, and I'm looking forward to learning more about foraging on my own.
Cool.
Thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate your time.
Every preacher loves a new pulpit. So
That's right. Okay. Well, and remember, everybody, you can eat the wild plants, but don't feed the wildlife. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.